Hello, this is Dr. Esa and welcome back to the wonderful world of Greek. Today we're going to look at the contract verbs. Let's see how it's different from our regular active indicative verbs. So this is the graph or the chart that we already learned, the present active indicative verbs. You can see luo, lueis, luei, luomen, luete, and luusi. So what is then difference between the regular present active indicative verbs and regular present active indicative verbs that are contract verbs? So the basic difference between the regular verbs and the contract verbs is that the contract verbs end in alpha, epsilon, or omicron. So the final vowel here is called the contract vowel. The contract vowel comes before the connecting vowel and collides with it, and then there's a sort of a contraction which then make the final combination of vowels slightly different from our regular vowel pattern. So for example, we have poie, then obviously poieo, which ends in epsilon, which is a contract vowel. Then it collides with the omicron, that is the connecting vowel of the personal ending, and the end result is poiumen. So you can see that this part is slightly different from what we have learned so far. So all alpha, epsilon, and omicron contract vowels behave in a similar manner, but only in the present and imperfect tenses. The imperfect we will look at later. So here are some examples. So here we have the verb poieo, and the final version or the final form of the first person plural would be poiumen. Notice that contraction here. So if we work our way back from the stem poie, to which the omen is connected, so epsilon and omicron collide here, and out of that contraction becomes omicron epsilon as a result of collision and contraction. Similarly, we have the verb agapao, and we have agapa with the iota subscript, and if we work our way back from the third person singular agapa, which is the stem with the personal ending a, so the collision is alpha and epsilon. So what happens is that the epsilon contracts out and the iota ends up underneath, and it becomes agapa with the iota subscript, also the circumflex accident. Now you don't need to know all of these subsections, obviously. The most important thing is to be able to recognize the vowel pattern and the verb and what is the personal ending and the translation, of course. There are 5 different rules of contraction that would help, if you learn these, would help you to understand the contraction and the contraction vowels and the contract verbs in general. So first, the omicron epsilon ending or the vowel pattern is formed when we have the collision of epsilon omicron or omicron epsilon or 2 omicrons. It can be also highlighted in this way. So the omicron epsilon follows from epsilon and omicron, and so this is where you can see the contract vowel and the connecting vowel, the contract, and it ends up giving the equation of poiumen. Here's another example with the verb plero. Omicron epsilon comes from omicron epsilon. So you can see the pattern here, and it ends up becoming plerute. And final example, omicron ypsilon comes out of 2 omicrons, and plero o with 2 omicrons becomes plerumen. The second pattern is A is formed from 2 epsilons. So again, if we look at the verb poio, so poie, including the ete ending, becomes poieite. Omicron is formed from almost any combination of omicron or omega with any other vowel except the rule 1. So here's an example from the verb agapao. Agapao, so agapaomen becomes agapomen. So we love. If we go to fourth example, alpha is formed from alpha and epsilon. So again, from the agapao verb, so agapaete becomes agapa with the circumflex. Similarly here, agapae, what happens is the collision of alpha and epsilon, which turns into alpha, and then here the iota is placed underneath. So then we have eta is formed from epsilon alpha iota, and there are a variety of combinations. So for example, a future middle second person singular ending is psi, and as it collides with epsilon, the sigma falls out, becomes poiei, and then what happens next is that the epsilon alpha combination becomes eta, and again the iota drops underneath, and then we'll get poie with the iota subscript underneath. Now this may seem a little bit complicated, and certainly you don't need to know all these equations, but it does help if you remember some of the basic contraction patterns. So perhaps more than anything, it's good to recognize the certain ending patterns in certain contract verbs. For example, agapao, which is the verb to love, very common. Poio, which is the verb to do, and plero, which is the verb for to fill or to fulfill. So here you can see that from agapao, there's a contraction, and the ending actually is agapo, I love. Agapaes becomes agapas, agapae becomes agapa, and agapaomen becomes agapomen, and agapate, agaposi. So if you're looking at the endings here, you should to deduce or realize what the actual verb person is. And similarly, poio becomes poio, poies, poie, and as you can see here, really this circumflex in these two are the only ones that really seem to be something different. Poiumen, same here, poiete, this is a instead of ete, poiusi, and so forth. Similarly, plero, plerois, pleroi, it's a little bit different ending since we have the omicron there. But plerumen, plerute, and plerusi are very easily identified. And finally, you can practice contract verbs on page 67 of your workbook, the warm-up and parsing, and then finally do the homework translation sentences 6 to 10 on pages 68 to 9. I'll see you later.